Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 14th of November of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. As we discussed during the previous video, during the night between the 13th and the 14th of November of 2025, both the Russians and the Ukrainians attacked each other with a significant number of drones and missiles. The sources are saying, the pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that during the previous night the Russians used more than 400 targets, air vehicles. The Russians used, more precisely, 449 air vehicles, including drones and missiles. The Russians once again used dozens of missiles and hundreds of drones. As a result of attack, the Russians destroyed or damaged lots of critical infrastructural objects. For example, the fire anomalies were recorded almost in the most central part of the city of Kiev. As of the end of the 14th of November, it's still unknown what exactly the Russians attacked. Furthermore, another fire anomaly was recorded in the southwestern part of the city of Kiev. Something was destroyed probably, but as of the end of the 14th of November, it's very difficult to understand where exactly. Anyway, the Russians carried out massive attack. The city of Kiev was targeted from all sides, as you can see, and another critical object of critical infrastructure was damaged and destroyed on the territory of Belaya Tserkva. As for this area, everything is clear. The Russians attacked the Belaya Tserkva thermal power plant, so this is 100% the object of energy infrastructure. So this is the situation. At the same time, the Ukrainians counterattacked or struck back Russia, or struck at the same time. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, used more than 200 drones. This information today was provided by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. The Russians stated that over the past night, air defense alert systems intercepted and destroyed 216 Ukrainian drones. So, according to information we have, the Ukrainians attacked, the Ukrainian drones were destroyed above Krasnodar Krai, Saratov Oblast, the Republic of Crimea, Volgograd Oblast, Rostov Oblast. So when talking about these regions of Russia, we can make a conclusion that Ukrainians launched two waves of attack. The first wave most likely was launched from the Kharkiv region in the eastern direction. The drones were flying above the northern part of Rostov Oblast, and Ukrainian drones answered the Volgograd Oblast, and then Ukrainians answered the Saratov region. And according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, up to 45 drones were destroyed exactly above the Saratov Oblast. As of now, it's very difficult to understand what exactly the Ukrainians were planning to destroy. Maybe the Ukrainians were planning to attack the Engels airfield that Russians used for their aircraft Tu-22 or Tu-160 to attack deep inside of the territory of Ukraine. So most likely that was the target, this Saratov airfield. So, and this confirms that most likely, and due to the fact that Russians were attacking Ukraine just with missiles, with let's say surface-to-surface missiles, mainly surface-to-surface missiles and drones, this means that most likely in coming days the Russians can repeat their massive attack, but this time using missiles of Ha-101 type. This is a very important situation, and for these purposes the Russians would have to use aircraft. So maybe this is the reason why Ukrainians were trying to attack in the direction of Saratov, but due to the fact that we haven't received anything from the area of the city, we believe that this attack failed. Another wave of attack was launched in the southern directions and the southern regions of Russia, and lots of drones, more precisely 65 drones, were destroyed by Ukrainians in the area of Krasnodar Krai region, so it's somewhere here. But as for this territory, the Ukrainians managed to get some results. The sources are saying that in Novorossiysk a missile hit, presumably at the S-300-400 position on the territory of some, let's say, had some military, let's say, military barracks or military forces. So this territory was damaged and destroyed. Later the sources reported that Ukrainians attacked some energy objects, or maybe some oil pipeline or something like this. And few hours later, after these both attacks, the mutual attacks ended, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, published this video. And according to him, in this video we can see long Neptune missiles. So this is a long Neptune missile, or how Ukrainians call it, Dovgi Neptune. This is the missile that most likely Ukrainians were using to attack in the direction of Novorossiysk, and this is a long-range missile, the long-range missile that Zelensky was talking about during the previous months. So this is its official presentation, or what is this currently very difficult to say, but obviously this is a very interesting situation because most likely this missile was designed with the help of the Western and NATO countries. Now it's very interesting whether the Ukrainians use this missile and whether the Russians managed to get parts of this missile to understand who provides components for this missile and who stands behind this missile of, let's read in quotes, of Ukrainian production. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, we received lots of very interesting updates. The Russians continue their offensive operation. The pro-Russian sources this morning reported that as a result of clashes, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Orestopil. So this village was captured by Russians, and the group of forces East published this video where we can see how exactly the clashes and fightings for this territory were taking place. The Russians were using bombs, multiple launch rocket systems, drones, artillery strikes, and so on. And in the final part of this video, we can see probably a dozen of episodes of how Russians were raising their Russian flag in different parts of the settlement. So based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation that was published today, we have adjusted the map and we colored this territory under complete control of Russian army. So this is the situation, for example, by the end of the 13th of November of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 14th of November. So these territories were captured, and the most important thing is that the Russians most likely are not going to stop. They're going to continue moving further, because today we start receiving lots of updates from the territory of the settlement by the name of Velika Mikhailovka. This village is located further to the north of the settlement of Orestopil. In this video we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking temporary deployment points of the armed forces of Ukraine across this settlement. And you know that usually, and this is like a normal thing, I'm trying to tell you that usually when Russians continue their offensive operation, or when Russians in the area of the responsibilities of the group of forces East capture another settlement, usually they publish at the same day a video when they start bombing and attacking the next settlement in this area. Which means that the village of Velika Mikhailovka is obviously going to be a next target for the armed forces of the Russian Federation on this direction. So let's wait and see what is going to be next. But now we see the entire picture. You know that the Russians are moving in this area, and now we see a real plan that the Russians created probably a few years ago, maybe even. So if you take a look at this map, we're gonna see a very interesting picture. So this is I call this today a Pavlograd foothold. So this is the territory I'm talking about. So this is the area between the city of Konstantinovka and the settlement of Gulyai-Polye. And as you can see, the Russians managed to, it seems like they managed to break through the, let's say, the defense line, this one, the old defense line that was built by Ukrainians in, let's say, from 2014 till, let's say, 2025. So this territory was almost captured by Russians. And right exactly from this red line, when the Russians outflanked the city of Gulyai-Polye, when the Russians outflanked the settlement of Konstantinovka, from this huge foothold, and the length of this foothold is already more than 100 kilometers, from this foothold, Russians have all chances to begin advancing further deep inside of the Dnipropetrovsk region in the direction of Kharkiv area without being involved even in clashes for the rest of Donetsk region. So the Russians from this foothold, if they take under control the settlement of Velika Mikhailovka, if they capture Gavrilovka, if they finish the battle for Novopavlovka, and if Russians and when Russians finish the battle for the Pokrovsk agglomeration, then from this line of Gulyai-Polye, Konstantinovka, Russians can begin advancing further in the northwestern direction without, as you can see according to the map, without almost any resistance from any defense belt from the Ukrainian side, because the Ukrainians didn't have enough of time. They didn't have enough of time to create additional fortifications in this area. And most likely the Russians will be able to move there very fast, and with the purpose to shorten the distance to the city of Pavlograd. Obviously, I'm not saying that this is exactly what is going to happen, but this configuration of the front line tells me that this is a perfect decision and a perfect solution for the Russians, and a perfect timings when they can do this. If Russians somehow are able to cut Pavlograd or to block Pavlograd, at least its southern, eastern and the northeastern parts, we're talking about this area, then the eastern part of Ukraine will lose up to 50% of its supply from the mainland. Especially the city of Kharkiv will lose maybe 50 or 60 or 80% of its logistic. The territory area between Kharkiv, Slaviansk, Kramatorsk will lose up to probably 80% of logistic as well. This breakthrough in this area can turn the situation, the special military operation, to a completely unrecognizable way or something like this. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. But now we see that the Russians are fighting for every single settlement we've just discussed, which means that they indeed have some plans on this, let's say, on this direction. Anyway, let's continue. So we have adjusted the map, and now let's move further. Let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting from this area as well. First and the most important update is coming from the central part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. We're talking about the settlement of Roh. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village of Roh was completely captured and secured by Russians. And a few hours later, some pro-Russian source published this video, and here we can see a Russian soldier that was waving with the Russian flag in the most northern part of the settlement of Roh, which means that indeed this territory was completely captured. So this is the place where a Russian soldier raised the flag. This is the point. So based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, of course, we adjusted the map. We adjusted the northeastern part of the city of Pokrovsk, almost under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. At the same time, we see that Russians continue offensive operation in the area in the direction of the city of Mirnograd, trying to tighten the news from the western and the southwestern directions. At the same time, and also a very important thing, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the most southern part of the settlement of Mirnograd. In this video, we can see a Russian soldier that raised the Russian flag above the most big and the most probably big building in this area, construction on the territory of the Dmitrova mine. So in this area, furthermore, today neutral mappers reported that Russians continue advancing in the area of the southern Mirnograd citadel. And also we had this video where we can see how Russians were attacking in the direction of the city of Mirnograd, how Russians were landing infantry, and how Ukrainians, for example, this is the moment, were attacking Russians on the territory of the citadel. So this building was geolocated, and this is exactly the place that was attacked by Ukrainian FPV drone. So based on these videos, we came to conclusion that the Russians once again continue tightening the news around Ukrainian positions, and that most likely Ukrainians in coming days will start suffering very huge problems. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Shakhovo pocket. During the previous 24 hours, several pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the battle for the Shakhovo pocket has finished. They stated that the Ukrainians lost the battle for this territory. The Ukrainians reduced their activities, they reduced their offensive operations, and during the previous 24 hours, furthermore, additional changes on the ground were recorded. Some of the territories were colored under complete Russian control. Some of the territories were colored as a gray zone, but the sources reported that these gray zones were captured by Russians as well. So the battle for this area are about to be finished. Furthermore, several pro-Russian resources have already colored this Shakhovo pocket as a territory under complete Russian control. So Ukrainians lost the battle, but they not lost the battle, they refused to continue this battle because they realized that they have no chances. Maybe they have chances to unblock the city of Mirnograd from the north, but they don't have time for this. They don't have time to recapture all these territories because Russians brought additional forces. So the Ukrainians decided to fall back. Furthermore, and this is also a very important video, and this is the settlement of Belitskaya. This is the next settlement in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration, and as you can see, and this is a very important thing, that the settlement of Belitskaya is almost reduced to ruins, which means that the situation is that the battle for the city of Pokrovsk is about to be finished, and the Russians have already begun preparation their territories before they start moving further. As you can see, the settlement of Belitskaya is almost reduced to ruins as a result of Russian fire with artillery, with aviation, and so on. So the village, the settlement, is already ready to begin clashes with Russians. So this is the entire territory from Konstantinovka to the Zaporozhye direction is a part of the Pavlograd foothold, and most likely Russians will try to use these territories to advance in this direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of Konstantinovka. Very interesting and sometimes strange things are coming from this area. First of all, the Ukrainians suddenly began counter-offensive or counter-attacks in this area. First, somewhere on the 10th of October or the 10th of November of 2025, the Ukrainians counter-attacked in the area of the southern parts, southern micro-districts of the city of Chasiv Yar. So we had this video on the 9th of November of 2025, and here we can see how Russians were attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in this part of the city of Chasiv Yar. When I saw this video for the first time, first I thought that this might be something like mistake or archived video, but later several neutral mappers confirmed this information that indeed Ukrainians counter-attacked and managed to restore control over the southern micro-district and the micro-district sect number 2. So, but the question is, what was the purpose of Ukrainians? And now we see that Ukrainians counter-attacked also in the area of Stupochki, Prityechina, and the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka. This video was published yesterday by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were counter-attacking Russians in these villages with 2 tanks. These 2 tanks were destroyed. One of the tanks was destroyed exactly during this video. Another tank returned back to the city of Konstantinovka and then was destroyed with FPV drones on the territory of the city itself. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that Ukrainians launched counter-offensive operation from the city of Konstantinovka in this area towards the city of Chasiv Yar, towards the settlement of Stupochki. So Ukrainians are tasked to slow down Russians. It seems that Russians are about to begin their major offensive operation in the direction of Konstantinovka, so that is why Ukrainians launched their own counter-attacks in this part of the front line with the purpose to ruin Russia's plans. I'm not sure whether the Russians will change their plans, but obviously if the situation is correct, if indeed the Ukrainians manage to counter-attack and to recapture these territories, the Russians may start suffering problems with their logistics, and now they need to waste another week or 2 to restore control over these territories. And this can of course change the entire plans and to change the entire timings for the battle for Konstantinovka. As for the Sivers-Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates. Pro-Russian sources reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to capture entirely territory to the east and the northeast of the city of Seversk. So this dense network of the fortifications was captured. Furthermore, according to pro-Russian sources, Russians managed to enter the northeastern part of the city of Seversk itself and to dig in deeper. So currently everything along this red line is already under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, according to same pro-Russian sources, they're pushing and from the southern direction. So the situation in the city of Seversk is very complicated right now, but one thing is clear, that the battle for the city has already begun, and most likely lots of videos and geolocations from inside the city are ahead of us, and soon we're gonna start adjusting the map in this area as well. As for the northwestern direction of the city of Liman, the Russians this morning or yesterday began their major offensive operation in this area as well. The sources are saying that Russians managed to improve their positions along the entire perimeter of the city of Drobushevo. They answered and improved their positions in the northwestern part. The Russians answered the settlement of Drobushevo also from the northeast. The Russians managed to improve their positions almost until the river of Seversky Donets, and the Russians managed to cut supply and logistics between Drobushevo and Svetogorsk. So we believe that in coming days we're going to get additional updates from this area as well, and it seems that the major battle for this village has begun. As for the Kupiansk direction during the previous 24 hours, nothing special. As for the northern directions, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions around the settlement of Dvarechenskoye. This is the map by the end of the 13th of November. This is the map by the end of the 14th of November. The Russians improved their positions significantly, as you can see, and soon the clashes for the village of Dvarechenskoye will begin. As for the city of Volchansk, just small change in the area of Sinelnikovo according to neutral mappers. The Russians continue advancing. Most likely in coming days we're gonna start getting updates from the settlement of Volcha. And that's it for today. Military with Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.